The moment he walked into the room, everyone thought he was a nobody. 10 seconds later, they were stunned. He sat in the very last row of every classroom, not because the seat was comfortable, not because he liked the view, but because he wanted to disappear. Every morning he walked in quietly, head down, shoulders low, moving like a shadow in a place full of noise. Students laughed, joked, shouted, but he walked past them like he didn't exist. To the world, he was just the quiet kid, a background character in a story no one cared to read. He never raised his hand. Teachers stopped calling on him because they knew he wouldn't respond. He didn't ask questions, didn't argue, didn't push back. He just sat there with that blank, unreadable expression, the kind that made people wonder if he was even paying attention. But he was paying attention to everything, every whisper, every glance, every judgmental smirk thrown his way. Some students called him shy. Others called him weird. A few didn't call him anything at all, because to them, he wasn't worth noticing. He walked alone, ate alone, went home alone, and in a building filled with 1,000 students, he somehow felt like the only one who didn't belong. But silence can be deceiving. People assumed he had no confidence. They assumed he was scared. They assumed his life was boring, empty, plain. But what the world saw was only a mask, a carefully built layer of quietness he wore to protect something inside him, something powerful, something that wasn't ready to be seen, because deep in his chest, behind the quiet eyes and soft footsteps, there was a fire, a burning, electric spark waiting for the right moment to explode. But nobody knew that, not the teachers who looked past him, not the students who mocked him when he walked by, not the kids who pushed him aside in the hallway, without even looking up to say sorry. To them, he was forgettable, replaceable, invisible. But here's the thing about invisible people. They see everything. He saw the popular kids showing off in class, the athletes bragging in the cafeteria, the drama club practicing too loudly in the hallway. He noticed every detail, even the ones others ignored. He saw the fake friendships, the forced smiles, the secrets passed in tight circles. He saw the kids who pretended to be strong, but were crumbling inside. He saw the ones who bullied others, because they didn't know who they were. He saw the ones who laughed loudly, because they didn't want anyone to hear their pain. He saw everything. Quiet people always do. But despite noticing the world never noticed him. When teachers asked the class to pair up, his seat stayed empty. Every time. When the lunch bell rang, he didn't rush out like the others. He walked slowly, giving the crowd time to pass, because it was easier to be alone than to be pushed aside again. When teachers returned graded work, his papers were placed on his desk gently, like they were afraid he'd break, like he was fragile, like he was incapable of anything more. They didn't say it out loud, but the pity in their eyes said enough. He's not like the other kids. He doesn't try hard. He's too quiet for his own good. Whispers can be louder than shouting when they're spoken around someone who's forced to pretend he can't hear. But what they didn't know, what none of them ever imagined, was that he was hiding something. A secret so unbelievable, it would flip the entire school upside down. A talent, skill, a gift, whatever you want to call it. But it wasn't small. It wasn't ordinary. It wasn't something you discover by accident. He protected it like a treasure, not because he was afraid of sharing it, but because he was waiting for the right moment. He knew showing it too early would make him a target. He knew revealing it too soon would bring the wrong kind of attention, the kind that crushes you instead of lifting you. So he stayed silent, stayed hidden, stayed invisible. People laughed at him for being quiet, but they didn't know his silence was armor. People joked about him being weird, but they didn't know his weirdness was brilliance. People ignored him because they thought he had nothing special, but they had no idea how wrong they were. Because deep inside that quiet, lonely, unnoticed boy was a force powerful enough to shock the entire school. A force he had been shaping in private, sharpening in secret, perfecting when no one was watching. And soon, very soon, the world that ignored him was going to remember his name forever. But for now, he sat in the back of the classroom, silent, still unseen, holding the secret that would one day change everything. The day started like any other. Students dragged their feet through the hallway, Teachers clutched their morning coffees, and everyone looked half asleep, waiting for the first bell to ring. But something felt different. A strange tension buzzed in the air, the kind that makes people whisper, without knowing why. Then at exactly 8:05 a.m., the classroom door swung open, and the principal walked in. She never visited classrooms. Not unless something big was happening. Students straightened up. Teachers froze mid-sentence. Even the loudest kids shut their mouths instantly. And then she said the words that flipped the entire school upside down. "This year, our school will host its first ever talent challenge." The room exploded. The quiet kid in the last row simply blinked, like he had expected this moment. But everyone else reacted like someone had announced free money. Chairs moved. Phones came out. Kids screamed. Even the teacher had to raise her voice to calm the class down. The principal lifted her hand for silence and continued, "One winner. One performance. And the prize is a full-ride scholarship to any college of your choice." For 1 second, the room was silent. Then chaos erupted again. Students jumped. Some cheered. Some shouted, "I'm winning this." A few actually stood on their chairs. A scholarship wasn't just a prize. It was a future. A lifeline. A chance at a different life. Everyone felt the shock. Everyone except the quiet kid. While others were losing their minds, he looked calm. Too calm. Like he already knew something nobody else did. Within minutes, the school hallways transformed into a battlefield of talent. Singers practiced loudly, their voices cracking but their confidence unshaken. Dancers rehearsed aggressively, bumping into lockers. Some kids beatboxed. Others tried comedy routines that weren't funny at all. One kid even brought a violin and played terribly in the hallway. Students who never spoke to each other were suddenly forming groups, alliances, teams. People practiced everywhere: stairs, hallways, cafeteria lines. The whole school turned into an audition room. But the quiet kid walked through the chaos like a ghost. Not singing, not dancing, not practicing anything. Just observing. Watching every detail with calm eyes. Some kids noticed and laughed. "He's not entering. Obviously. Bro doesn't even talk. How's he gonna perform?" Watch him recite the alphabet and call it talent. People assumed. People joked. People mocked. But he didn't react. He didn't look embarrassed or angry. He just kept walking like none of it mattered. Like their opinions bounced off him without leaving a scratch. A few teachers started to wonder. One of them, Mrs. Riley, watched him closely and whispered to another teacher, "Something about him feels different." But no one agreed. They said he was too quiet, too shy, too invisible. Nobody believed he had anything worth showing. But if anyone had looked closely, really closely, they would have seen something unusual in his eyes. Focus. Determination. A calm confidence that didn't match the way people treated him. Then the sign-up sheet went up on the main bulletin board. It was like watching a stampede. Students ran toward it and scribbled their names instantly. Singers, dancers, rappers, gymnasts, magicians, comedians. Talent, real and fake, filled the page in minutes. And then, when almost everyone had left, a single hand reached forward. A quiet hand that no one paid attention to. The hand of the boy everyone ignored. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. He didn't wait for approval. He simply picked up the pen and wrote his name. No one noticed. No one even turned their head. But if someone had been standing close enough, they might have seen a small smile appear on his face. A tiny, confident smile that vanished as quickly as it came. A smile that said he wasn't entering the competition out of desperation. He had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, hiding something powerful, something no one was ready for. And now, finally, the world was about to see who he really was. When the competition finally began, the entire gym felt different, like something big was about to happen, even though no one knew what it was. The bleachers were completely packed, every seat taken, every corner filled with students, parents, teachers, and people holding up their phones, ready to record every moment. It wasn't just a school event anymore. It felt like the whole town was inside that gym waiting for something unbelievable. Kids started performing one by one. Some danced. Some sang. Some played instruments. The crowd clapped, cheered, and smiled politely. There was talent for sure. Good talent. Decent performances. Definitely entertaining. But nothing mind-blowing. Nothing that made you stop and think, "Bro, did that really just happen?" In that entire lineup, no one was expecting anything crazy. People were scrolling their phones between performances, whispering to each other, laughing with their friends. It was the kind of event where you think you already know how it's going to go. Predictable, safe, normal. But the moment his name was announced, everything shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just the announcer calling his name like it was any other contestant. But the reaction from the crowd? Completely different. The entire gym went silent for a second, then small whispers started spreading everywhere. Him. Wait, he's performing. What can he even do? No way he signed up. People turned to look at each other, eyebrows raised, some even laughing under their breath. He wasn't the popular kid. He wasn't the flashy kid. No one had ever seen him on stage before. He was the kind of guy who usually sat in the back of the class, quiet, minding his own business, never trying to stand out. And now he was walking to the center of the gym floor, all eyes locked on him. He didn't look nervous, but he didn't look confident either. He looked like someone who had carried a secret his whole life and was about to decide, right here, in front of hundreds of people, whether the world deserved to hear it. He stepped forward. No intro. No fancy entrance. No wave to the crowd. No smile. Just him, and a microphone waiting in the middle of the floor. People were confused. Some still snickering. A few recording just for the meme. Teachers staring, wondering why this kid, who never participated in anything, suddenly decided to perform. He reached the mic, took a breath, lowered his head, and then he opened his mouth. What came out did not sound real. The first note hit the gym like a shockwave. You could see it instantly. The reaction wasn't delayed, wasn't slow. It was immediate. The front row shot up from their seats. A girl dropped her phone. A teacher's jaw straight up fell open. Another teacher covered her mouth with both hands. The audience froze. His voice wasn't normal. It wasn't expected. It wasn't something anyone in that building could have prepared for. It was powerful, in a way that felt like it wasn't coming from him, but through him. Deep, emotional, smooth, strong. A voice that felt like it carried pain, hope, and every story he had never told. People in the gym didn't just hear him, they felt him. Every note he sang sounded like a confession. Every breath carried weight. Every line felt like it had been waiting years to escape. Phones shot up instantly, hundreds of them, trying to capture every second, because everyone knew they were witnessing something rare. Something raw. Something unforgettable. Students who were laughing a minute ago were now speechless. The same people who doubted him were now staring, eyes wide, mouths open. Even the other performers, kids who practiced for weeks, looked stunned, like they knew their moment had already been overshadowed. He wasn't singing for applause. He wasn't performing for attention. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was telling a story. A story with pain. A story with truth. A story with heart. The gym lights made his eyes shine just enough that you could see it, the emotion he had been hiding for so long finally breaking free. Some people in the crowd started tearing up, without even realizing why. His voice carried something real, something human, that everyone connected to. He hit the high notes effortlessly, strong, clean, perfect. But the quiet parts, the soft notes that made the room hold its breath, those were the ones that changed everything. The gym wasn't loud anymore. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't full of noise. It was silent. Silent because every single person was locked into his voice, like it was pulling them in. As he kept singing, something unbelievable happened. People began standing up. Not at the end. Not after he finished. During the performance, a wave of students rose to their feet, row by row. Then the parents. Then the teachers. Until the entire gym, every single person, was standing, watching, recording, and in disbelief at what they were witnessing. He kept going. Stronger. Deeper. More emotional. His voice filled the gym like a movie soundtrack. A moment that didn't feel real, but felt legendary. And when he reached the final note, he held it. Perfectly. A note so clean and so powerful that it echoed around the gym even after he stopped. Then silence. A full second where nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody spoke. And then the gym exploded. Cheers. Screams. Applause so loud the floor vibrated. People rushing forward. Friends jumping. Teachers crying. Students chanting his name. The kid who no one believed in. The kid everyone underestimated. The kid who walked in alone and quietly. Just delivered the greatest performance the school had ever seen. And every single person knew it. When he finished singing, the gym didn't just applaud, it erupted. Every single person stood. Students, teachers, parents, even the kids who had been laughing and mocking him just hours ago, all leaped to their feet. The cheers were deafening, but somehow they didn't capture the full impact of what had just happened. It wasn't just a performance. It was an experience. A story. A moment that would be remembered forever. People were crying. Real, unashamed tears. The ones that come from being completely moved. Teachers cover their mouths, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Students clutched each other's shoulders, still staring in disbelief. Phones had fallen from hands. Cameras and microphones captured the moment, but even they couldn't truly hold the magic that had filled the room. Every person in that gym felt it. Every heart had been touched. Every mind had been awakened to a truth they hadn't realized. The quiet kid they ignored, the one they mocked, had a story. And now they were listening. For a few moments, no one moved. Not even him. He stood at the center of the floor, silent, holding the microphone with steady hands. His chest rose and fell as he took slow, measured breaths. The energy in the room shifted. No longer was it chaos or excitement. It was awe. A deep, heavy respect that hung over every person like a tangible force. People weren't just clapping, they were humbled. They had just seen someone pour their entire soul into a performance and had stripped away every pretense, every judgment, every assumption they had ever held about him. Then the principal, tears brimming in her eyes, stepped forward. She had seen a lot in her career, but this was unlike anything. Her voice trembled slightly as she addressed him in front of the entire school. Where did you learn to sing like that?" she asked. The room went even quieter. Silence so complete that you could hear every small sound, the creak of the gym floor, the distant hum of a fan, the soft gasp of someone in the front row. He didn't answer immediately. He looked down. His fingers gripped the microphone gently, almost reverently, as if it were an extension of himself rather than a tool. The silence wasn't awkward. It was sacred. And then, almost in a whisper, he spoke. Not to show off, not to boast, not to claim credit, but to share a truth, raw and pure. "My mom used to sing with me every night until she passed away last year," he said. His voice was soft but carried to every corner of the gym. "This was the last song we wrote together." The room froze. That one sentence cut through every distraction, every opinion, every expectation anyone had. Students stopped whispering. Teachers straightened in their seats. Parents clasped their hands over their mouths. You could feel the weight of it settle on every shoulder in the gym. It wasn't a story about talent or competition anymore. It was a story about love, loss, and dedication. About carrying someone else's memory forward. About turning grief into something beautiful that could be shared with the world. No one spoke. No one laughed. No one tried to cheer louder. There were no cameras, no phones, no social media posts in that moment that could capture the gravity of what was happening. There was only respect. Deep, unshakable respect. A reverence that made every single person in the gym pause and realize that for all the jokes, for all the whispers, for all the assumptions, they had missed something vital. They had missed seeing a person fully human, fully brave, fully remarkable, hiding in plain sight. Even the students who had mocked him, the ones who had whispered behind his back, couldn't meet his eyes. They had been wrong. So wrong. And they felt it. Their laughter, their teasing, their superiority, all of it evaporated in the face of truth. And it was humbling. Watching someone give so much of themselves, carrying so much history in every note, made the petty things they had done seem meaningless. Every snicker, every judgmental glance, every moment of exclusion, they had all been unnecessary. And they realized it. The principal stepped back, her voice now trembling with emotion. This is why we do this. To see hearts, not just talent. To see courage, not just performance. To see life, not just grades or rankings. The crowd remained silent. They didn't need to respond. The words themselves weren't enough. The performance had already spoken louder than anything anyone could say. And then he lowered the microphone. A small, almost shy smile appeared on his face, the the same calmness he had always had, that quiet confidence that no one understood. He hadn't performed to impress anyone. He hadn't performed to win applause. He had performed to honor someone who had shaped his life, to tell a story that had been living in his chest for far too long, to let the world glimpse something they never thought they would. And they had. The silence lingered for what felt like eternity. And then, finally, the gym erupted, not in noise, but in a wave of acknowledgement, respect, and admiration. People clapped, yes, but this time it wasn't just polite applause. It was heartfelt. Every cheer was loaded with understanding. Every standing ovation wasn't about the scholarship or the competition. It was about recognizing someone who had carried more than anyone could see, who had shared a piece of their soul with the world, and who had reminded everyone that the quietest people often have the loudest impact. That day, no one called him quiet. No one called him invisible. No one doubted him again. Because they had seen him, not just on stage, but as a human being, as someone capable of deep emotion, incredible talent, and unimaginable courage. And the lesson remained long after the applause faded. Sometimes the people you overlook are the ones who leave the biggest mark. That day, when the results were finally announced, the entire gym held its breath. Every student, every teacher, every parent waited in anticipation, not knowing what to expect, but sensing that something extraordinary had just happened. The competition had been intense, with countless talented kids performing their hearts out, showcasing everything from perfect dance routines to flawless singing, to original acts that took months of preparation. Yet, nothing compared to what the quiet kid had done. Nothing even came close. When the principal finally called his name, the reaction was immediate and electric. The gym erupted in cheers, claps, and whistles, yet amid the noise, there was an unmistakable sense of awe. It wasn't just excitement. It was admiration, respect, and recognition of something far deeper than talent alone. The quiet kid, who for so long had gone unnoticed, who had sat in the back of every classroom, who had been overlooked, mocked, or dismissed by so many, had finally stepped into spotlight and claimed a moment that belonged to him. He walked forward calmly, almost humbly, as if he hadn't just blown everyone away with a performance that could have stunned professional judges. His movements were deliberate, steady, and confident, yet there was no arrogance, no need for self-validation. He had performed for the right reason, to express, to honor, to finally tell a story only he knew. And now, in front of the entire school, that story had been heard, understood, and celebrated. Students who had ignored him in the halls, who had whispered about him behind his back, who had laughed when he was quiet and withdrawn, now found themselves looking at him with a new kind of curiosity. They wanted to know him. They wanted to sit with him, to shake his hand, to ask him questions they hadn't dared ask before. It wasn't popularity that drove their sudden interest. It was the undeniable truth that they had been wrong about him all along. The kid they thought was invisible, unremarkable, and unimportant had just shown them something unforgettable, a depth of talent and emotion they couldn't have imagined. Even the teachers were stunned. Those who had doubted him, those who had written him off as simply another quiet student, now found themselves rethinking everything. The boy who had appeared disengaged, who had seemed like he was fading into the background every single day, had carried a story of determination, resilience, and heart that no one could ignore. And in that instant they saw him, not as a student with a low profile, not as a background character in the school's daily drama, but as someone remarkable, someone worth noticing, someone who had always mattered. The quiet kid didn't smile widely. He didn't jump up and down or yell in triumph. His reaction was subtle, composed, yet the weight of the moment hit him just as deeply as it hit everyone else. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen. He felt the warmth of recognition, not the superficial, fleeting kind that comes with popularity, but the profound kind that comes from people understanding the real essence of who you are. And in that instant, every lonely moment, every whispered insult, every day spent unnoticed suddenly felt worth it. He glanced around the gym, taking in the faces of everyone who had witnessed his performance, and there was a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. He didn't need to prove himself to anyone anymore, because he had already proven it in the only way that mattered, through his courage, his authenticity, and the story he had carried inside him for years. Those who had doubted him, underestimated him, or dismissed him now had to see the truth. Talent and strength are not always loud. Sometimes they are quiet, and when they finally emerge, they resonate louder than anything else in the world. The boy's peers who had once ignored him, those who had walked past him in the hallway without a glance, now crowded around, eager to connect, eager to offer congratulations. Their voices were full of awe and newfound respect. Even students who had bullied him or excluded him found themselves reconsidering their own behavior, silently acknowledging the weight of what they had just witnessed. The quiet kid wasn't seeking revenge or validation. He didn't need it. The respect he now commanded was earned through something far greater than any words or social gestures. It had been earned through sheer authenticity and courage. He didn't become famous that day. He didn't receive an army of followers or fans. He didn't suddenly transform into a social media phenomenon. What he did gain, however, was infinitely more valuable. He became visible. He became acknowledged. And in that visibility, he finally experienced the deep, human satisfaction of being recognized for exactly who he was. All those times he had felt invisible, all the moments when he had doubted whether anyone would ever see him, vanished in a single, breathtaking moment of truth. And for the first time ever, he felt like he mattered, not because someone handed him recognition, not because he won a prize or a trophy, but because the people around him now understood that his silence had never been weakness. It had been strength. His quiet had been patience. His reserve had been preparation. Every note he sang, every expression he gave, every story he revealed through his performance showed the world that the quietest people often carry the loudest truths, the deepest courage, and the most powerful stories. That day, a lesson was learned that went far beyond talent, competitions, or applause. Everyone in that gym, from the smallest student to the oldest teacher, understood something essential. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Never dismiss those who appear invisible. And never assume you know someone's story based solely on what you see on the surface. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room has the loudest story, and when that story is finally revealed, it changes everything. And as he walked off the stage, surrounded by cheers, smiles, and awe, he didn't just leave a performance behind. He left a mark on everyone who had watched him. He left a memory, a lesson, and an undeniable truth. Being seen isn't about being loud. It's about being real. And that day, for the first time, the quiet kid was truly, fully, undeniably seen.